Video 4, Compromise of 1850, Bleeding Kansas, Dred Scott, Lincoln Douglas debates, and the secession of the Southern states and the Confederacy of America. So where we left off, the gold rush happens. People flood into California. Overnight, it's a state, and overnight they decide, we don't want to have slaves. We already decided. Well, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. The state can't. What do you mean the state can't decide? They're the people. It's a democracy. It doesn't work that way because there's this thing called the Constitution, and Article 6 says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The next step down is the federal government, and then the next step down is the state government. So Constitution, got to follow it. The next level, that's supreme, are the federal laws, then the state laws. So you can say that you're free or whatever, but ultimately the state law can be overruled by the federal law. And the federal government's going to come in because half of the federal government wants slavery. So this idea that we'll just let the state decide, not so fast, my friend. You must be new around here. So we look at the map, and 16 free states versus 15 slave states. That's going to give the federal government the opportunity to make slavery illegal once and for all. The slave states aren't going to have it that way. No. We got to figure something out. We got to reach a compromise. What do we do with California? Well, the slave states want more slavery. Well, the free states want more. Are we going to keep doing this? Yes, we're going to. Actually, this is the last video because we're going to start the war next. So one last compromise to try to figure this thing out. All right, Compromise of 1850. First rule of the Compromise of 1850, fine. California, you want to be free, you can be free. That's going to throw off the balance of power. That's going to give more free states than slave states. So why would the slave states ever agree with this? Well, they got to get something in return. That's how a compromise works. So right now, if you're keeping track on the scoreboard, free states winning, slave states losing. All right, what's next in the Compromise of 1850? The idea of popular sovereignty, or the people rule. So we're going to rip off that idea from California, and we're going to use that moving forward. No longer is the federal government or the free states and slave states going to decide the outcome or the destiny of future states. From here on out, in Utah and in New Mexico and in other places eventually, we're going to use popular sovereignty. So Utah territory, New Mexico territory, when they get enough people to become a state, the people will decide, not the federal government. And technically, that's another win for the free states. The slave states are not going to be able to fight that. They might not be able to win. They would much rather have the power. They would much rather have the decision. So if we're keeping track of this compromise, even though that's not the biggest thing in the favor of the free, if you had to decide, that would again favor the free states. Number 3 of the Compromise of 1850. Slave trade is banned in Washington, D.C. It's a bad look when you step outside of the White House and we're selling human beings. Not a good look. Slave trade no longer happening in Washington, D.C. That's 3 for the free states. What are the slave states going to get? I thought this was a compromise. How did we do this? All right, so what are the slave states going to get? They're going to get the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, there already was a Fugitive Slave Act, but it wasn't very strict. It wasn't enforced very strongly. Now we're basically going to get a super steroided up Fugitive Slave Act. What is in this new Fugitive Slave Act? It's got to be a lot to counter, to make this a compromise. So number 1, a suspected slave could not speak or defend themselves in court. Hey, he's a slave. Oh, well, actually, I'm not. Nope, you don't get to defend yourself in court. They accused you of being a slave in New York or Ohio or in Connecticut. Guess what? That's it. Game over. Wait, they don't get to defend themselves? What if they're American citizens? What if they're not a slave? What if they were never a slave? Doesn't matter. Suspected slaves do not even get a trial, so you can't defend yourself, and you don't even get a trial where you get to talk to a jury or you get to talk to a judge to explain the mistake or the mix-up or what's going on. Gone. Over. Many free blacks were forced into slavery. You can watch the movie or read the book. Solomon Northup, 12 Years a Slave. Also, the final kicker, because remember, we've got to get a compromise, even this out. Aiding and abetting a slave, helping slaves get into freedom, helping them out while they are free. $1,000 fine. It's a major fine. The Southern representatives, the slave owners, they know what's going on. They know the game. They know what the future is. They know what the abolitionists are doing. They know that they're instigating things. They're making it worse and worse and worse year after year. So it's not necessarily always about getting the slaves back. It's not necessarily about expanding slavery into all the states, although those are true. They know that, hey, there is a game going on. There is a battle. There's a political war going on. It's not just about the facts of slavery or not slavery. There's stuff going on behind the scenes, and we've got to fight this dirty war, and their fight right is now going to be, we're going to start attacking these abolitionists. We're going to stop the protesters. We're going to stop the activists. And when we shut them down, then we're not going to have any more problems. If we can silence them, if we can silence the people speaking up about slavery, then guess what? No one's going to shout about slavery anymore, and we can just go back to our normal things. So we just got to shut these people up. Now we can punish them. So hey, you got a thumbs up there for the South. All right, Kansas, Nebraska Act, which will lead to bleeding Kansas. What could this possibly be about? It's the same thing over and over, slavery, slavery, slavery. So is Kansas going to be a slave state or not a slave state? Well, again, popular sovereignty. Let the people of Kansas decide. They're going to vote on this decision, and it turns into an absolute mess. We have border ruffians or people from outside of the state flood into Kansas. They're instigating problems. They're causing problems. They're causing fights. They're causing riots. They're causing chaos. They're trying to illegally vote. And it's people on both sides. We've got the people who are pro-slavery, the people that are anti-slavery, and they're all flooding into Kansas. And people of Kansas are like, where did you people come from? What's going on again? I thought we were just going to vote on slavery or not. Next thing I know, I look out my window and people are shooting and killing and fighting each other. I don't even know who you are. Who are you? Why are you in our state? What are you doing? We hate slavery. I get it. You hate slavery, but why did you come to Kansas? Because we want to make sure there's no more slavery. I got it. It's cool, man. But like, this is my home. Would you stop burning things down? And then people are like, yeah, slavery. We need slavery here. Like, well, I don't know if I agree with you. Can you not be in my front yard? But this is what happens. Sound kind of familiar? A bunch of people flooding in from out of the state to fight for their beliefs because the other side's wrong. Sound familiar? Causing chaos, riots, craziness, people dying, being murdered because one side thinks they're right and one side thinks they're wrong. And they're just, can you guys just like go do this in your own state? Can you like fight this thing somewhere else? So that happens in Kansas. So John Brown is considered to be a legend and people love John Brown and they honor him for whatever reason. The statues of John Brown can stand, but statues of people who've murdered less people, who've murdered no people, got to tear those down. But John Brown, let's look at this is episode 1 of John Brown being crazy. In response to the sacking of Lawrence, Kansas, John Brown led a small band of men to Pottawatomie Creek on May 24th, 1857 or 1856. The men dragged 5 unarmed men and boys believed to be slavery proponents. So that doesn't say that they own slaves. It just boys that they think might have liked slavery, boys that they think had the idea that slavery could be okay. Well, they murdered them brutally. John Brown pulls boys out of their home. You like slavery, don't you? Well, I don't know. Pop! And we honor John Brown. John Brown, they don't tell this story in your second-year history book. They'll talk about John Brown and, oh yeah, the truth goes marching on. And he was a murderer. And I know some people, yeah, but he was on the right side of history. Okay, he murdered people because he thought his ideas were right. Just stop and think about that. Think about that. You might disagree with someone and you might be on the right side and their ideas might be wrong and you may not agree with their beliefs and all the facts may be on the side of your beliefs and their beliefs might be terrible or horrible or incorrect or whatever. We can attribute any kind of intentions or motivations behind their beliefs. But should you murder them for their beliefs? You can disagree, but should you be able to murder them in cold blood because you do not agree with them? I would say probably not. Look, slavery is evil. Slavery is wrong. But is this the way to decide the issue? Well, let's go kill a couple kids. That's going to make things better. So that's Kansas. Ultimately, they vote and they say, well, actually, slavery is legal. And they'll say, no, you guys cheated. You cheated. This is a rigged election. Well, what are we expected to do? We got people flooding into the state. They're killing each other. And we're like, what do you think? You thought this was going to be legitimate? Guess what? Sound familiar? Like, you won't accept the outcome. Well, you cheated. And then the next election, you won't accept the outcome. Well, that's because you cheated. Let's look at some examples. 1824. We talked about this in the video before. Andrew Jackson got cheated. 1855, the one we just went over. You cheated. 1876, the Compromise of 1877. We'll talk about that in the next unit. They cheated. Lyndon Johnson cheats. Lyndon Johnson cheats again in 1960 when dead people were voting. We didn't cheat. You just need to accept the outcome. I'm not going to accept the outcome because you cheated. 2000, hanging chads. You guys are cheating. Well, Just accept the outcome. 2004, voting machines. Oh, they cheated again. 2016, Russia cheated again. 2020 election, the app was designed by that dude. It never ends. Can't we all just accept it? But they cheated. I'll update this 2024, 2028, 2032. One side cheated, other side refused to accept it, whatever. Andrew Butler of South Carolina is a punk. So just give you an idea of the mood of the country. Charles Sumner, Massachusetts, representative or senator, I think he's a senator, says, hey, Andrew Butler of the South, you are a punk. And Andrew Butler's cousin, Preston Brooks, in the House of Representatives says, why don't you say it to his face? What did he really say? He said, Andrew Butler is a pimp for slavery. These are our government officials in Congress giving speeches, official record in the Congress saying, yeah, Andrew Butler's a pimp for slavery. That's pretty insulting. And kind of, he does have a little bit of swag to him right there. Culture of honor, some background to what Preston Brooks is about to do to Charles Sumner. People in the South and in Appalachia, there is a culture of honor that doesn't necessarily exist in other parts of the country, kind of, but it is deeply ingrained in the South. It is deeply ingrained in Appalachia. Read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell for a million reasons, but for particular reasons, the culture of honor chapter is amazing. And so the point is, you do not insult men from the South. You just don't do it. And if you are going to do it, be prepared for physical violence. Hatfield and McCoy's Harlan, Kentucky Bloody War, the list of feuds and violence throughout, rough and tumble. Actually, don't Google that. You might get me in trouble. Thomas Sowell's Rednecks and Black Rednecks, White Liberals goes into this. The culture of honor is very interesting. It's brutal. It's violent. And so Preston Brooks will nearly beat Charles Sumner to death in Congress. That gives you the general mood, the feeling of the country. Like things are falling apart. We haven't reached that yet in 2020. Fortunately for us, Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi are not giving each other sleeper holds, although I think those old people probably can just take naps on their own. We call it a napper move, I guess, not just a sleeper hold, napper hold. Anyway, we're not to that point. Our congressmen and women are not killing each other, nearly killing each other on the floor of Congress. So we haven't hit DEFCON 4. If it's a 4 or 1, whichever one's the worst. We're not there yet. Probably on our way. Either way, congressmen nearly killing each other. Yeah, the country's probably falling apart. Dred Scott, we're going to amp it up, go even further. So Dred Scott decision will ultimately say slaves are property, and the Missouri Compromise is illegal. This idea of this line, north is free, south is slave territory. Glad we solved that. Actually, erase that. No more. There is no Missouri Compromise because of the Dred Scott decision. Slaves can be everywhere. Slavery is legal everywhere. Wait, that's not the way the rules. The rules don't matter anymore because of the Supreme Court's decision. Well, how did this work? So Compromise of 1850, you see that. We're really talking about the Missouri Compromise, north, south. Well, here's the issue with Dred Scott. Dred Scott will belong to a military doctor in Missouri. Missouri is a slave state, so the military doctor could own Dred Scott. The military doctor gets moved to Wisconsin. He will eventually die. When he dies, Dred Scott will soon say, hey, look, I'm in a free state where slavery is illegal. I can't be a slave. I should be free. So he sues, and it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, well, one, you're a slave, not a citizen, and so you don't have the right to use the court. So you lose. Scott's like, well, all right, I guess I wait. Whoa, we got more. We got more. So one, you can't even sue, so stop. Number two, you are property, and the government cannot take a citizen's property without due process. So they cannot free you. If the government were to free you, the government would be taking the property of a citizen. And the Fifth Amendment says that you have due process. If the government is to take away, if the federal government is to take away your property, and you are property, then they must follow a process. Usually if you've committed a crime, they can take away your freedom or your property or whatever. They can't just take your stuff. They can't take your house. They can't take your horse. They can't take your car. They can't take your slave, and you are a slave. All right, well, this has not gone the way. Oh, we're not done yet, says the Supreme Court. Number three, therefore, the Missouri Compromise, which says that people in the North are free and that you can't own slaves, That violates the Constitution. If the federal government were to free slaves in the North, the federal government would thus be taking people's property. And the government does not have the authority to do that. The government would be violating the Constitution. Therefore, the Missouri Compromise that says you cannot own people in the North, you cannot own property, that law violates the Constitution. Slavery is legal everywhere. What? That is the decision that is made due to Dred Scott.
Talk about your alternative backfires. Talk about your alternative backfires.
The beep ruined it. The beep really ruined that, didn't it? Well, we're going to stick with it because I'm not recording that again.